Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Today, Kate and I are going to be talking all about parenting styles. What are they? Because there's a load of names out there for them. Gentle parenting, tree-style parenting, jellyfish parenting, and those are only just a few. So we're going to make that clearer for you and support you to parent at your best. Thanks for joining us for Being Real Parents with me, Anna, and my colleague and buddy,
Kate. We work in the parenting space.
and it's here where we'll talk about our worlds as parents, the good, the not so good, and the hilarious, and mix this with what we know about behaviour and psychology. So this came up because last night I was facilitating an Incredible Years. We were talking about parenting styles. I do this across all of my mahi, and there's always loads of questions around it because people get really worried that they're not parenting in the right style or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I rang you and said, can we talk about this a bit more? And here we are.
It's all happened. It's all fallen together.
Parenting styles. What are your thoughts and feelings around this?
Yeah, I think for starters, like you said in the intro, the names, there's so many names for them, which I find is really confusing.
Yeah.
And especially the, proper fancy names. I get them mixed up myself, so it's hard to explain them to someone else when you're like, wait, which one's that again?
Yeah. The proper fancy names are authoritarian, authoritative, which isn't confusing at all, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah, thank you. And then we've got indulgent, which is, hugely strength-based, isn't it? We all want to be that kind of parent. And then uninvolved.
Makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you hear those names, no wonder talking about the parenting styles does create a bit of stress for parents because you're like, oh, is that me? Am I uninvolved?
Or am I authoritarian and I don't even know what that means?
Yeah. So I can fully understand how people have questions.
Yeah. And then they've been morphed, haven't they, into
they have.
this helicopter and tiger and jellyfish and laissez-faire comes up a little bit.
Yeah. So many names.
Yeah. So we're going to attempt today to try and make that really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the names we use often at Real Parents, just to add another lot of
layer.
names, but do really stick with me. So we talk about the grass and the rock and the tree and then obviously the helicopter.
Yeah. And we're not clearly the only ones that are talking about them in that way.
No.
Everyone would have heard potentially about the helicopter, maybe the tree and rock. Yeah. Kei te pai, we that's our mission today, to get these really clear. So do we start here by going through them, or do we start here with a little bit of the research and then go deeper?
Yeah, Let's do research.
Oh, we love the research. The research was done initially by a psychologist called Diana Bowman, and she coined those parenting styles: authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive indulgent. And then later, Stanford researchers Eleanor Maccoby and John Martin added the uninvolved and neglectful style of parenting. Thanks, guys. But what I do love is the way that they started to research this and the way that they categorised them. So they looked at parents and whether or not they were high or low on parental demandingness, which is a terrible name, isn't it? I think that's probably means our expectations. Yeah. Whether or not we have high or low expectations of our children, and our responsiveness to our children, which has created those typology that they've called it. So we are going to take you through that in terms of the terms that we know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's basically all the research. That's how these were determined, if you like. And no matter the names that you've heard, gentle, natural, free range, all of those, they all fit into one of these 4 categories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're listening to Being Real Parents on Plains Media, broadcasting on 96.9 FM, streaming live and available as a podcast on plains.org.nz. Cool. So these complicated names obviously have so many different simpler names. And so for the purpose of this, obviously we've shared at Real Parents, and as you say, lots of other places, we call them the rock, the tree, the grass and the helicopter. So to clarify that, the rock is the authoritarian. Why can I not say that word?
You don't need to anymore. The rock is, authoritarian.
Okay. Now I'm just going to call it the rock, okay?
Yeah, good. Moving along.
So the rock, and the way I like to think about this is obviously that being, like if you think of the characteristics of a rock, it's kind of hard, it's not flexible, it's solid, and if we think about our parenting in those ways, it comes from a place of that harshness and often fear-based.
Yeah.
So it's very much do as I say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I think obviously we'll go into this more, but there are times when we're going to jump into that. So I often think about if our child's about to run out on the road, we are going to come at that as a rock.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's safety.
Safety first.
Yeah.
The other thing about the rock too is that in terms of the initial research, a rock has high expectations, high demandingness of their children, but low responsiveness to their children.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we think about having high expectations, that responsiveness is being tuned into our kids, recognising how they're feeling, what's going on for them, and being interested in that, mindful of it, and, responding appropriately.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so that's the rock.
That's the rock.
And then if we jump to the grass, so that uninvolved, lovely term.
Yeah.
And once again, if we think about the characteristics of a piece of grass, it's kind of all over the show. It's getting battered in the wind. It doesn't have those strong roots, so it's very flimsy, I guess.
Yes.
And so then if I think about that in our parenting, that's like there are no rules. Anything kind of goes. Yeah, very limited boundaries. And then that whole idea around being uninvolved. So, they're not really around often. So it might be, they're kind of left to their own device a lot. Yeah.
In terms of the research, low expectations and low levels of responsiveness.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yep.
And then our helicopter, so that permissive or indulgent parenting style. And obviously that was part of that, the grass and the helicopter were kind of one at one point. But obviously the helicopter we're seeing that more these days, with that helicopter kind of floating above, watching what's going on. And so often, if we're thinking about that in our parenting, we're worried our children are going to make mistakes, I guess. So we're constantly hovering above them, kind of waiting and wanting to stop those things from happening.
Yeah, rescuing.
Yeah, for sure.
And in terms of the research, that's low expectations of our kids and high levels of responsiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see how that plays out, hey?
Yeah, totally. And, that comes from a really good place, hey? We just want the best for our kids. And we don't want them to feel those hard things, and so we want to rescue them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I didn't know anything about parenting, I'd be a helicopter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Me too. I still am sometimes.
Yeah, same.
And then we've obviously got our tree, so our authoritative. And that's kind of where we're aiming to be, right? So we've got, if we think about our characteristics of a tree, we've got our strong, solid base, those deep roots, and then, the tree is able to move in the wind. So we've got that compromise, so that strong foundation of a relationship where we're really focusing on our child and, relationship-based, which we talk about all the time. And then that ability to kind of bend but not break. So obviously supporting our kids and being able to compromise with them.
Yeah, and in terms of the research, this style of parenting has high expectations and high levels of responsiveness as well.
Yeah.
And, because they've got that belief that their children can do things and they are capable of it.
Yeah.
But they're also aware they might need to do some coaching around how, children are feeling about it or approaching it and those sorts of things. It's also the place that we want to be. Hey, this is the parenting style that has the most around research. The most research around having the best outcomes for kids, higher self-esteem, more capable, competent kids, able to regulate and manage emotions, those sorts of things. And if you ever do a parenting program with us or anybody else, this is where they'll be, this is where they're teaching it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But obviously we're going to jump into those other styles at times.
We're a mixed bag, aren't we?
We are.
We want to remain as trees as much as possible, but I always give the example, I'm a rock if I'm teaching my kids to ride their bikes on the road, do as I say, or the bike's in the back of the car, no negotiation on that. I'm a grass on Christmas Day. Anything goes. There's enough people around to, look after my children, and they've got enough things to do and are generally happy for most of the day. And then also I fly up into helicopter mode reasonably often when, I feel like my children, I feel kind of like they're in a vulnerable place.
Yeah.
And I want to support them with that, but I just have to be aware that supporting them doesn't mean doing for or assuming that they can't do it for themselves. Yeah, as well.
Yeah, and because obviously we want them to experience those things. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to be with them to work through some of that trickier stuff, because if we're constantly rescuing, they're not going to learn from doing themselves. Yeah,
that's right. I always, my lovely Oliver was giving me permission to talk about this, mostly because it's my story. And because when she was 14, she decided that she wanted to apply for a job. She wanted to get, money because I obviously wasn't providing enough for her. And I kind of internally eye-rolled and went, oh, yes, that's lovely, dear. Grass, straight into grass style parenting, uninvolved, whatever. And then she came at me with an advertisement saying that she wanted to apply for this job. And I went, flying into helicopter mode because, and I told her that I could do her CV and her cover letter and everything. I could do everything for her. And she said, thanks, Mum, and went off and did it herself. And then, clearly my helicopter style parenting and grass style parenting has luckily had not much effect on her. And then she got an interview for the job. She went for, and then they didn't get back in touch with her. And she said to me, that's a bit rude, isn't it, Mum? And it is a bit rude, I guess. And I said, flying into helicopter mode. Why don't I, pen an email for you to send to them and you just follow up on that and stuff like that. And she goes, oh, yeah, okay. And then I didn't get to it. And then she got to it before me and came out of the bedroom and said, I did email them and I texted them as well, which horrified me. I've never texted a potential employer in my life. And so, and you know, and all that. But you can see what I'm up to in that because, and why I'm flying into helicopter mode, because I have felt failure in my lifetime and I have felt disappointment in my lifetime, and we all will, and all of our children will. And I'm trying to rescue her away from that because I know how horrible and awful and sickly that can feel. Yeah. And it can feel kind of personal and, just awful. But the deal is that if I rescue her away from that and do all that stuff for her so that she's got the perfect CV and the perfect email and whatever, and you know, and therefore in my mind can't be turned down. Of course you can. But if I do that for her, and she, you know, and she succeeds, which is what I want for her, she never has that sense of disappointment. She doesn't have that kind of low-level disappointment of not getting the first job, And if we don't allow our children to feel those feelings, even though they're hard for them and even though they're hard for us, they don't have that baseline when they go for big things and are disappointed by them too, you know? And not saying that, you know, we're going to set our kids up to fail over and over again, but the deal is that they're going to do that anyway, and our job is to walk alongside them, be there for them, be responsive in there, and, you know, scaffold them as much as we can in order that they can succeed, but not do for, hey. And the thing is that if we haven't felt, you know, disappointment or upset or, you know, all of those awful big, deep things at low levels growing up, we also aren't supporting our kids to be resilient when they feel those things at deeper levels, you know, when they're older.
Yeah, that's a huge shock, hey, when you're older and then all of a sudden something massive happens and, like you say, you haven't had that baseline, like, whoa. So that's the reason why we have to think about that. Nowadays we're hearing that there's more parents inside of universities than ever have before, you know, fighting for their kids' grades, you know, whereas, you know, and, you know, my parents didn't set foot on university until I was graduating. Yeah. And I'm not saying that, you know, that either of those is wholly wrong. Yeah. But I'm also saying that, you know, we need to be aware that our children, you know, if we're being trees, our children are competent. They are capable. They can do these things. Yeah. They just need support to be able to do that. You know, we have to believe in them and then support them with that. And then also be responsive if it doesn't work out or if it does. Yeah. 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 There's a lot, hey? Yeah. It is. No wonder people have questions about this topic. Well, they freak out, and I freak out too, because as you can see, I wobble all over the place. Same. Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, as long as we come back to that, you know, that tree style of parenting, and my questions are all, you know, to myself are always, you know, do I expect that they can do this right now? You know, am I holding, you know, hope for them? Am I, you know, championing them, you know, cheerleading, those sorts of things? Or am I just kind of like walking all over them and determining that they can't do it, and I must do it for them? Yeah. Yeah. And that, for me, just comes back to that constant idea around the relationship, right? Yeah, and, like, what is that relationship like? What do I need to do to strengthen that, or what do I need to do to just reflect on where that's at? It's interesting, isn't it, the relationship stuff? That parenting, you know, the parent-child relationship is just a relationship. Yeah. It's just a relationship. Just like, you know, we don't, you know, I don't analyse the relationship that I have with my own parents and go, oh, how am I daughtering? Am I doing all right? Am I daughtering? How am I friending? Am I doing all right? Am I friending? You know, I don't analyse these to the same degree that I do as a parent. Yeah. Yeah. There's constant pressure around that, isn't there? Yeah. But that is that responsiveness, hey? Yeah. You know, like if we, you know, we respond to our friends, we want to be good people in it. We want to keep our friendships. And it's exactly the same with parenting, hey? Yeah. Yeah. And because of that pressure, I think it's really important to remind ourselves that it is really okay to jump into these different spaces at different times and be kind to ourselves about that and be like, okay, or maybe that was a strong reaction to that or whatever. And if we come back to the relationship, it might be that we talk to our kids, in a child-appropriate way around that too, so that they're aware of where we're at.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's, again, building on that relationship, having them understand the reason why. Yeah. Nice. And if I was going to, or if you were going to give advice around remaining as a tree, what would you say?
I think for me, thinking about the characteristics of a tree really helps me the most in that. So thinking about those strong roots, like what is that? To me, that's the relationships are always coming back to that. Thinking about compromising and being able to sway in the wind with them when those times are hard or there's stuff going on and, being able to talk about it and it not just being a hard no. For me, it's definitely coming back to the characteristics of what a tree looks like. Yeah,
that's nice. I was thinking about all the dappled shade of unconditional love that I can provide. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so for our 3 top tips today around these parenting styles, number 1 is really reflecting on yourself and your treeness, if you like. So doing this at those times that feel like they can be tricky. So it might be the mornings, it might be the afternoons or the evenings, often around those routine times, or just tough stuff or, just tough times in general. Like, how did I approach that as a tree? And just having some reflection around that. Number 2, so after we've kind of done this reflection, thinking about how we're going to set ourselves up for success to try and come back as a tree as much as possible. So what gets in the way here? What could we be doing to support our children more? So is that setting up a routine chart, or is that thinking about the morning and going to school? How could I support them to be more involved in that process, and how can we do that together? And then number 3, knowing that it is okay for us to jump into the other parenting styles occasionally and when we need to. So not putting so much pressure on ourselves and knowing that that's perfectly okay sometimes.
If you have more questions around this than what we've answered for you, please don't hesitate to come and talk to us or work with us. Often we are supporting parents who have got different parenting styles and they want to come to a happy compromise, and that's part of the work that we do. And if you want to hear more of our podcasts and information and advice, please either go to plains.org.nz, being Real Parents to do that, or come and check out our website, www.realparents.org.nz, to see how we work and who we are.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today.
We hope you've learned that while parenting is challenging sometimes, that's totally normal. It's been fun having you with us. Keep being amazing.